Hey everybody, let's do a quick video about this Supreme Court ruling. In a 6-3 ruling, they've rejected the independent state legislator argument, which means the state legislators do not have ultimate authority when it comes to map making, and technically there's a slight possibility a state Supreme Court could strike down a partisan gerrymandered map. So I'll scroll through this article. You may have seen my videos where I reviewed every redistricting map. I did it last year. I try to look at it from a neutral perspective, and I do focus on the partisan makeup. I know sometimes the courts, especially in the Alabama case, they do factor in a racial aspect. I don't look at that at all. I look at the partisan makeup. That's the thing I think everybody can get behind. It'll cut across red states and blue states. And I've said we're voting for political parties, not leaders of racial groups. So therefore, the statewide partisan reflection is the most important metric. The only time I can see using race as a primary factor would be after everybody is already part of the same political party. The most obvious time you'll see that would be in deep blue cities, when it's all Democrats and no Republican representation. That's pretty much the only time I could see maybe wanting to then focus on race. I still find it to be distasteful, but I know there's so much fighting over that, and that's really the only time I could see potentially going in that direction. Some people disagree with that. They say, no, race has to be a factor. Well, you can't have two deciding factors. And if hypothetically you take it to the extreme, where there is perfect racial representation, but the partisan gerrymandering results in one party being completely out of the equation, or where you have perfect partisan representation, but one racial group is completely left out of the equation. Every time my view is going to be in favor of the latter. I really get burnt out on this topic. I think a lot of it is because a few years ago, where the Supreme Court could have struck down partisan gerrymandering, but it did not rule in that direction. That I thought was a big blow to neutral fairness. Because in this last redistricting process, I've gotten turned off by hearing all the different sides, all the different arguments. I recommend taking a look at the top 10 best and worst maps, and I definitely recommend taking a look at the video where I reviewed which maps are the most biased. It's a little complicated, but I can put it up here, and as I always say, there's no perfect formula for identifying which maps are the most fair. Sometimes districts have no major party opposition, sometimes it's an independent candidate, sometimes there's two Democrats or two Republicans in the general election. That is going to skew things a little bit. And also my formula does not take into account the geography. That's another thing to consider, I think, after the partisan fairness. And it's not accurately going to reflect if a district was won by 1 or 2 points, as opposed to a landslide or no opposition. So the worst map is the Illinois map. I didn't even need to compile any of this data. It already seemed like the worst to me. But after I put in the data, it is far and away the front runner. That map is not going to be struck down. And I don't think it got enough attention. The things I hear about the most are Alabama, Florida, Texas. New York did get a lot of attention because that map did get struck down. But I think the big blue states are the more egregious offenders. And these maps are going to stand. Some of the Republican maps I can't really defend because they are clearly biased. But I think Illinois is much worse than any of the Republican maps. Also California, there was an independent commission there, but that map heavily overrepresents the Democrats. Connecticut and Massachusetts, same thing. And according to my data, Iowa is the worst Republican map. There's 4 Republicans, 0 Democrats. Democrats are not completely shut out of those districts, but based on the midterm results, that is the worst map for the Democrats. The Alabama and Louisiana maps, they're way down here. Part of that is because some districts had no opposition, like I said, but there are significantly worse maps than those 2 states. Texas, based on everything I've seen and the results in the midterms, it's only a little bit skewed toward the Republicans. It's not nearly what I've heard it made out to be. So you could look through all this, you could go on and on about it, you can criticize the formula, you can have your own formula. The only thing I will point out is this is pretty much the data I used from about 5 or 6 months ago. Some of the results may have been tweaked slightly since then, but this is just to give you a general idea of which states were the worst. I think it's pretty bad that some of these maps are going to stand, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. The Supreme Court should have not allowed partisan gerrymandering, and then it's even more of a surprise at this point, after everybody thought it was so conservative, rules against Alabama. There really has to be a nationwide solution. I don't think it's ever going to happen, even though when it's put to a vote, pretty much every state agrees. They want to take it out of the legislature. They want it to be an independent commission, but then there's always fighting over who gets on the commission. What if there's a tie? How much do we factor in everybody's race? It really never ends. That's why I get burnt out on it. But as far as this decision here, we could see redraws in Wisconsin, Ohio, North Carolina, New Mexico, even possibly New York. That would be a travesty because they already redrew that map from a massive Democratic overreach to something more in the middle. So who knows what's going to happen? If anything significant happens, I'll probably try to cover the new maps. There's some good maps out there. There's some all right maps out there. There's some bad maps, and then there's some terrible maps. There's going to be disagreement on the severity, but I would hope most people could agree that something needs to be done, something that would be consistent across all states, and it would accurately capture the partisan reflection of that state. You don't want to only go back one election and say that the next election has to perfectly reflect what the results were in the previous election. And you're never going to get it perfect. Sometimes there's swing districts. Sometimes things look skewed when they might not be. Sometimes different demographics, different partisan populations. They're spread out. They're condensed. They're in different parts of the state. It's not an easy solution. It's an incredibly difficult solution. I've done a series of videos on how I think it could be solved. I've reviewed all the maps. Seems like everybody's happy about some of it. They're also not happy about the rest of it. And I think redistricting and gerrymandering, it's really emblematic of the entire political process. They all want to call out the other side when it's a problem, and then they go completely silent when they do the same thing. So I don't want to go on and on about this. A lot of data out there, a lot of different opinions. These are just some of my thoughts about the entire process. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about redistricting? Which maps do you think are the worst? Which maps do you think do not get enough attention? What do you think the best maps are? And what do you think is going to happen going forward? Let me know down below. Take a look at my other videos and playlist on redistricting. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.